In a way, Beethoven would seem to be an even less likely candidate as a fugue writer than Mozart. So many of the characteristics of his style, the abrupt changes of tempi, the dynamic surprises, for instance, would seem, just as in Mozart's case, to contradict the continuity of line and rhythm which fugue demands. One might assume that this would be especially true of the almost improvised quality of Beethoven's later works, and yet, curiously enough, it's in the last sonatas and quartets that we find Beethoven doing most of his fugue writing. The fact is that his use of counterpoint in these last works tends to exaggerate rather than minimize those characteristics which are peculiar to this later style. He uses it not to dilute the intensity of his customary language, but to enlarge oblique lines, to underline austere modal relations which he cultivated in his last years. And with a sense of obligation to fugal counterpoint, the violent motives of this later style are disciplined in a most impressive way. Not all of Beethoven's counterpoint belongs, as does that example from the Hammerklavier Sonata, in works which reveal the turbulent, forceful Beethoven. He used quite a different order of counterpoint when he chose to write fugues into works which represented the lyric, idyllic, contemplative aspect of his temperament, works like the Opus 131 string quartet or the piano sonata Opus 110. In this sonata, the second last of Beethoven's major works for the piano, the last movement is given over to a series of two arias and two fugues, separated by passages of recitative. And Beethoven's contrapuntal style here is beautifully suited to the gently undulating flow of line which marks this work. Even the subject of the fugue mimics the upward curve of the opening motive from the first movement. And the continuation of the subject, using only motives derived out of itself as counter-themes, has a euphonious quality which sounds almost like Handel. The idea of a fugue being absorbed into a sonata or into any larger form might seem a bit surprising in a work of a romantic composer like Beethoven, but in a way it's particularly appropriate to the extended function of the 19th century symphony and sonata. It's in the nature of the romantic symphony and sonata to attempt an extension of minute motives into a grand design, and fugue is a linear compression of exactly this concept, the idea that a single motive can extend and unravel itself into the complexities of an entire composition.